A concern for justice is nothing new. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato offered in the Republic what's turned out to be an incredibly influential account of the origin and nature of justice. According to Plato's account, in the absence of justice, in what's come to be called a state of nature, intelligent people realized that they would each be better off if they agreed to establish and enforce a set of principles or rules that provided them each with protection against the greed and indifference of others. If each person willingly restrains his or her pursuit of self-interest in exchange for a like restraint by others, it benefits them all. So, for example, it's no surprise that societies who've established conventions of property also establish rules against stealing, force, and fraud. Depending on those conventions and depending on those rules, people can reasonably expect that the security those conventions and rules provide makes life better for everyone. We can think of the principles of justice as principles for the coordination and structuring of social interaction that would benefit all who are subject to them. These principles, if they're well designed, would structure society in a way that harmonizes with the idea that, quote, society is a cooperative venture for mutual advantage. With this conception in mind, people argue, the principles of justice deserve our mutual allegiance because they provide mutual advantage. But just what those principles are might well be different in different places and at different times as the circumstances change and what is in the mutual interest of all shifts. So what exactly justice might demand and who it will demand it of will not be discoverable without determining what the relevant principles are for that time and that place. Still, we can say that justice, defined this way, means that justice everywhere and at all times requires that we act according to the relevant, mutually advantageous principles. This ancient vision of justice has, as I said at the beginning, been incredibly influential. It's at the very heart of theories offered by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and David Hume. And it's at the core of the theory embraced by Thomas Jefferson and others central to the American Revolution. All of these people saw the authority of moral, political, and legal principles as deriving from the uncoerced and rational consent of the people who are subject to them. Plato offers a second theory of justice in the Republic, a theory which is consistent with the first, but more general. This second theory receives much less attention, but it's essential to understanding why Plato thinks acting according to mutually advantageous principles is not merely a good idea, but is genuinely a matter of justice. One reason why this second theory receives less attention is that at first it seems vapid and utterly trivial. All it says is justice is a matter of each getting what's rightfully theirs and no one getting what's rightfully another's. As I say, this seems so utterly trivial, one can pass over it quickly, as many do, without pausing to think through its implications. But in passing over it, people miss something crucial. Consider some serious question of justice, for instance, concerning slavery, or abortion, or taxation, or capital punishment. For each of these, when you look at various arguments and positions that have been taken on the issue, you find a striking variety. For instance, on the question of slavery, some 19th century abolitionists argued against slavery on the grounds that eliminating slavery would result in greater overall happiness, while others highlighted how disgusting they found the thought of one person owning another, while still others argued for abolition on the grounds that the slaves, being human, had a right to be treated as equals. On Plato's view, only that last argument gets to a question of justice at all, because only that argument takes a stand on what is rightfully whose. And that argument objects to slavery because it's taking from some people what's rightfully theirs, namely, they're standing as equals. For that reason, this argument has it, slavery is unjust. Needless to say, pro-slavery writers at the time countered this argument with different claims about justice, maintaining that slaves had no such right to be treated as equals, and that slave owners had a right to their property. Plato's second, very general theory of justice does not settle which argument is right, but it does tell us what it means to be thinking genuinely about justice. We need to be asking, what is rightfully whose? Consider another example, abortion. Notice that there are all sorts of arguments made about this issue. Arguments that appeal to the law and to the Constitution, or to happiness, or to what religious doctrine says, and so on. But these arguments are not about justice unless and until they turn to the question of who has a right to what. For instance, do fetuses have a right to life? Do women have a right to control their own bodies? It's only when we turn to these questions that we are thinking about questions of justice at all. This again is not to settle anything about what the right answers to those questions are. It's just to say these are the questions one must address if one is going to be thinking about justice. Another way to appreciate Plato's second general theory is to think about what a judge must consider when deciding a case if she is to be thinking about justice. Questions of what would contribute to the greatest happiness, or what decision would be most popular, or what might get her reappointed, are all, from the point of view of justice, beside the point. For justice, what matters is who has a right to what, and what decision will most successfully respect those rights. So what's the relationship of this second conception of justice to the first one, according to which justice is constituted by mutually agreed to rules that make everyone better off? The answer is, in contexts where people actually restrain their behavior in light of mutually beneficial rules, they all have a right to each person complying. If that's right, then justice requires that a person comply with such principles in that context, since otherwise they will be failing to give to others what is rightfully theirs.